Welcome to Compass Points, the weekly podcast for CompassKnox.com. CompassKnox.com is your best source for news and politics in Knoxville and Knox County. If you'd like to learn more about the topics discussed on today's podcast, go to CompassKnox.com and subscribe for in-depth coverage and much more.
Welcome to Compass Points, a podcast about Knoxville and Knox County. Government, politics, business, education, just about anything else that grabs our attention. I'm Scott Barker, joined by Jesse Fox Mayshark. We are the co-founders of Compass, which is a subscription-based website and newsletter where we report on all that stuff and more. And you can find us at CompassKnox.com. Jesse, how are things going today?
Oh, pretty well. As you can maybe hear, I've got a little bit of a scratchy throat, some sort of seasonal thing going on. 'Tis the season and all of that. One thing I want to state right up front, because Seth, our producer, and I were talking a little bit earlier, he says that on some of the podcasts he hears these days, there's a little notice at the front end that says guaranteed human, because I guess some people are making AI podcasts. So I do want to put that proudly put that notice right up front here. This is a human-generated podcast. You are not hearing robotically generated.
I mean, that's what the AI would say
here. It is what the AI would say. I mean, it does become a bit of a conundrum.
It's probably an AI-generated message.
I mean, well, like I know I've mentioned it on my show, and I've probably mentioned on here a few times. The number of AI phone calls I've started getting is pretty insane, and they're getting better. Like, I used to be really good at spotting them, but now they're like, I've talked to one for a couple minutes and then felt really stupid.
Well, and the other thing that's happening with all the AI generated stuff, I'm sure this is true with the podcast as well as the AI generated music that we're hearing about, is people are like creating AI generated content. And then they're also using AI bots, essentially.
Yeah, there was a George Washington t-shirt.
To stream and listen to the content in order to like persuade Spotify or whoever that they have all these listeners, so that they're trying to monetize it. And like, this is the future we're moving toward, is just like robots talking to each other. Yeah. Anyway, no robots here in the studio, I promise.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you saying that I'm human. That's there are people who don't believe that.
Yeah,
that I'm some true. kind of
it's kind of
evil force.
It's a low bar, but I think you clear it.
And Seth has already weighed in. That's Seth Barber, who's our producer here at Barbarian Productions. Seth, it is time for the 3-day old weather report. What's going on out there today?
It's been proper cold, and I'm not mad at it. Although my ankles are getting chafed from having socks on all the time. I like to go barefoot when possible, but now I need the socks for my toes. But then that elastic on the ankles gets a little itchy every once in a while, and the dry air and all that kind of stuff. But beautiful sunny day today on the Friday we're taping. Can't complain at all.
Sounds like you might need some hypoallergenic socks. If anybody's looking for gift ideas for Seth for Christmas.
Oh no, this is an old man conversation. I think. We're talking about
we're
our
not
feet.
Young.
and the darn kids and their new technologies, and we could go get off my lawn all day today.
Well, we'll try not to. So
old men yelling at cloud computing.
All right. Well, this past week we had some interesting stuff go on. We'll talk about some buildings in the city of Knoxville that were in the news. 3 of them that are notable, and we'll also talk about the state attorney general weighing in on the constitutionality of charter schools, and there was an interesting kind of a weird zoning fight this week at City Council we'll talk about briefly. And then we're going to start off with the appointment to the General Sessions Court judge seat that is vacated by retiring Judge Andrew Jackson VI. and Knox County Commission made that appointment. One of their own was up for the appointment, Rhonda Lee, but they chose to go with Andrea Klein, who's, if you're not in legal circles, Andrea Klein's name might be unfamiliar to you. She has been an assistant district attorney general for about 3 decades now. So anyway, she another ADA, Kevin Teeters, was also in the mix for that, but Klein and Lee were the only ones who got votes. Lee obviously recused herself from discussion and voting, so there were 10 commissioners who voted. 8 of them opted for Klein. It's kind of all these things with judges, whether they're appointed or elected, are always kind of odd for us to cover, because there's no, judges really don't do policy, which is one of the things that, one of the most interesting things that we cover, we think. And
right. And they can't really promise a lot if they're contending for office beyond promising to be, a good and wise judge, because you can't run for office saying, I promise to lock up more people, or I promise to, let more people go, or whatever. Like that would be a violation of judicial ethics to do. So really all they can do is present themselves and their credentials.
Yeah. And, they can't do that. And really, even in doing that, these are essentially trial judges. The General Sessions does a lot of they do a lot of hearings, and
right, and they do criminal and civil.
They do criminal and civil. They do all kinds of. They do DUIs. They do orders of protection. They do all kinds of stuff, and they are one of the things that Klein said is we are the gate. The General Sessions Court is the gatekeeper for the judicial system, because a lot of cases start there and go on to criminal court or wherever, and so they hear a lot of cases, a big variety of cases. But the thing is, with any trial court judge, that's the lowest rung on the ladder in the judicial system as far as being a judge goes. They are supposed to just follow the law as written and apply it to the facts, period. They're not supposed to. They're not like appeals court judges or Supreme Court judges, where they can try to determine whether things are previous decisions are proper or not, which is where you get into a lot of interpretation. They're supposed to take the law and apply it. So you really don't have a whole lot. I mean, obviously you have some discretion, but you're basically bound by that. So you can't promise to lock up everybody, because you don't know if everybody deserves to be locked up until you hear their case. So,
and these are partisan positions because they're elected positions. So when people run for these offices, they're typically under a Democratic line or a Republican line. And worth noting that all 3 of the applicants here were Republicans, which is what you would expect. I mean, a Democrat certainly could have put themselves forward, but given the political makeup of county commission, it was almost a foregone conclusion that it was going to be a Republican, and Jackson himself is a Republican, the judge who's retiring. So you could kind of assume it would be a Republican. That being said, it was interesting that so Klein got 8 votes out of the 10, and Lee got only 2. And the 2 who voted for Lee were her 2 closest allies on county commission, Commissioners Andrea Russell and Andy Fox, who, as we've talked about here plenty of times, but along with Lee, they've kind of formed the the culturally conservative wing of the Republican majority. And at the same time, Lee has, I think, alienated some of her other colleagues with some of her more overtly political activities. For example, the resolution honoring Charlie Kirk a few months ago, which we talked about. And so I don't think it was a great surprise. Now, the other thing that happened was Judge Jackson actually endorsed Andrea Klein, which was probably the biggest factor for a lot of county commissioners.
I think it was. Damon Rawls, county commissioner, said it out loud, but I think that these county commissioners are probably like a lot of the rest of us. Klein and Teeters are, like I said, they're both career prosecutors. Both have been in the prosecutor's office for a very, very long time, but with only a couple of exceptions, you never really hear about prosecutors. You don't, unless you're in criminal court, which is usually not a good thing. You really don't know them very well. Or if you're not an attorney who runs in those circles, you might not know them very well. And those Lee, of course, is an attorney, and Andy Fox is an attorney, but most of the commissioners aren't. I think that Jackson's endorsement went a long way. I think it also, and really it gave, commissioners who might have concerns about Republican commissioners, especially might have had concerns about Lee on the bench, kind of gave them cover that, well, Jackson, endorsed her and Klein, and so I'm going with Klein. Although they didn't say that publicly, I must stress that we're trying to read some tea leaves here a little bit, but and there's also, I was thinking while I was in the main assembly room while they were discussing this and getting ready to vote. Actually, I thought about it beforehand too. You always can kind of wonder about how much these commissioners want to make their jobs easier, and if they had appointed Lee, they would have to turn around and make another appointment to replace Lee on the county commission. They might have said, well, you know what, let's just do one appointment and appoint somebody else. Now this still has it kind of implications, and one of the things is we don't the judgeship in and of itself is not something that has real implications politically, and that's most of what we cover. We do cover a little bit of legal stuff, but not a whole lot. But Lee is going to run for that. There'll be an election in August to fill the rest of
right.
Jackson
term. Was most recently elected in 2022, and judges get 8-year terms, which is among the reasons that people like those positions. You only have to run every 8 years, so his term doesn't actually expire till 2030, and so this appointment is just through at the end of August, and in the meantime, there will be a county election, obviously, and Klein is going to have to immediately turn around and run. Now she gets the advantage of being able to run as an incumbent, but she'll have to actually run for that seat for the final 4 years of the term.
Right. Klein will do that, and Lee is going to do that too. And Lee is giving up her county commission seat to do this. And because she was going to be up for re-election next year as well. So instead of running for re-election in the 7th District, which is North Knox County, she is going to run for the judgeship. So this will eventually have an effect on the makeup of county commission. And they're both going to be running a Republican primary, which is in the spring. So, unless so far they're the only two who are running for that seat. We don't know yet if any Democratic lawyers will be running for that seat. But given the makeup of the countywide electorate, that is the kind of where you think that the decision will be made.
Right. We haven't elected a Democratic judge in Knox County, I think, since 2006. So it's been about 20 years.
Yeah, it's been a long time, and and in that it's not. You mentioned that Klein has the advantage. Will have an advantage being an incumbent, but Lee has a pretty big advantage too because her name, even though she's only been, she was only elected in her district, because she has served and has been a little bit one of the more outspoken county commissioners, and the electorate countywide does know who she is, and she so that name recognition probably favors Lee.
And she's also just had the experience of running for office before, which Klein has not, and so that's obviously an advantage.
Yeah, and she's got and she's got a team in place. Eric Wider, who's has been working with her, and he's he tends to be able to deliver in Republican strongholds when he works for campaigns. So that will be interesting. Of course, the 7th district seat, you got Buddy Burkhardt, who's the former GOP chair, who's now running. Of course, he's perceived as being a little bit more moderate than Lee, and
he's part of the kind of old school Knox County Republican establishment, which Wyatter has spent a lot of time tangling with, and probably will be in that race as well, because also running for that seat is Republican Barry Beeler, who's the current secretary, I think, of the County Republican Party, and is part of the cohort there that kind of took over the County Republican Party at their last selection of officers last year. And that group is affiliated with Wyatter and kind of his more aggressively MAGA brand of republicanism.
So while the judgeship is interesting in and of itself, it's also going to have these other ramifications that we'll look at down the line.
And either way, Rhonda Lee will not be on county commission come next September, whether she's a judge or returning just to private attorney practice.
No, that's true. That's true. We'll turn our attention now. Speaking of contentious, I guess you would almost say it's legal, but it's zoning. At city council last Tuesday, there was a zoning fight involving the West Hills Community Association, which is very politically influential, if not powerful, and they were fresh off a victory of sorts when they were the leading neighborhood group fighting against a change in the zoning law in the city that would have allowed subdivided duplexes, for lack of a better term, in all city neighborhoods. They were able to block that from applying to low density neighborhoods like their own, which is most of the city, and so they were not the only neighborhood association against that, but they were the leading voice, and they are very organized. They're very educated on the issues. They and their allies can speak in excruciating detail on zoning matters, and so this was a zoning dispute in their own backyard. This is a developer out of Nashville that is wanting to build townhouses on a piece of property that has defied development for a while because of various things, among them opposition from West Hills Community Association. This piece of property is on the corner, at the intersection of Middlebrook Pike and North Gallagher View Road. It doesn't have access to either directly because of 10 Mile Creek, which flows right across the corner of that intersection, and but it also doesn't have direct access to the rest of West Hills. But the West Hills Neighborhood Association, or Community Association, has opposed developments there before. This was kind of weird because what the developer wanted and what the West Hills Community Association wanted were two different things with the same outcome, essentially. It was, but it went on, discussion of this went on for a very long time, and it did 2 weeks ago when City Council met, or 2 weeks previously when City Council had met on to consider this on first reading, because zoning ordinance changes have to be done on 2 readings. But this has also got in the weeds because what the developer wanted. The developer wants to build 32 townhouses on this piece of property, which is fine with the zoning, essentially, and everything else. Can do that. But without getting too technical, back when the city did its recode process and rewrote the zoning code, that property beforehand had been a planned residential area, and when recode went through and the zoning rules changed, those existing zones, those existing areas, the underlying zoning can vary, but those planned residential areas were basically kind of grandfathered in. You can't do it now, new ones, but the old ones were kind of grandfathered in, so it's kind of following kind of the old rules a little bit with some of these properties, and the developer wanted them to remove that designation. Now, one of the things is with these planned residential areas, they all required public input in the development plans. Basically, when you would go to you couldn't just get approval to build something, build it. You'd have to take your plans to the planning commission and get those plans approved in a public meeting with public input, all those things. The developer wanted to remove that and have this and just be able to go ahead and go through the regular process. With the zoning of the property, the regular process, which the West Hills Community Association opposed, they locked that public input on the other one. It also requires public input because you've got to get townhouses as a special use, and you have to go and that is another process where you go before planning commission in a public meeting, and people who live nearby, or anybody can comment on it and try to weigh in on it, so that it is a public process. And so both sides wanted the same thing, but they were fighting tooth and nail for hours. They've done this for hours, actually for months, because this is something that's been postponed multiple times since the planning commission heard it back. I believe that was August when they initially said, recommended they go through with this. And there is a scenario in which they wouldn't have, if the developer got his way, they would not have to go through a public process, but they would have to subdivide the land, build fewer than 8 or fewer condos on each area, condos, townhouses. So doesn't really fit in with their plans. You got to they're supposed to consider the any use that can be done, but the property's not subdivided. So in order to build 32 units on that property, they would have to go through a public process. So it was one of those strange exercises you get to go through sometimes, where basically you had the same outcome either way it went, but you had people fighting tooth and nail over which way to go.
And which way did City Council go?
They went with the developer, which was, it was close. It was a 5-4 vote. You can't get any closer than that and have something pass. Andrew Roberto, who's leaving office. This was their last meeting, as a matter of fact. City Council. We'll talk about that in a minute too, a little bit. But he represents the area. He sided with the neighborhood. Charlie Thomas, who represents Northwest Knoxville and North Knoxville, west of Broadway, and kind of east of Norwood and areas east. He said, his neighborhood organizations didn't like it. One of the things about it was he said that the neighborhoods in his area who'd heard about this and didn't like it. One of their objections was the developer was from Nashville. And
I don't think that's a legal argument, but
it's not a legal argument, not a legal reason. But by golly, they don't want Knoxville to look like Nashville. So I guess any developer from Nashville is suspect there. But I mean, ultimately, like, the developer was always going to be able to build 32 townhouses here, right? That wasn't really a serious issue. It was just like what they have to go through to get there. Yeah, it's just as Lee Hume, the president of the neighborhood association, said, we just want a seat at the table. They want to be able to weigh in. I guess which is common. I mean, this one piece of property, like I said, it's at the very northwest corner of the West Hills area. It's not
right. It's certainly not in the heart of West Hills, and also both of those roads. That it's because often the concerns with especially any kind of multifamily development is traffic, but Middlebrook Pike and Gallagher View are already quite wide and busy roads. It's not like you're dumping out onto a neighborhood street. And they have multifamily housing on them. Yeah, it's quite a bit of it, actually. Yeah, and the West Hills Community Association is very, very jealously guards its borders. They sure do. I remember when the Tenova, when they closed St. Mary's and they went to build, were wanting to build their campus on Middlebrook Pike, the north, which Middlebrook Pike is essentially the north boundary of West Hills, and there was a lot of concern out of West Hills about the impacts, even though the only way to get to Tenova is from Middlebrook Pike itself, and it's not like it would increase traffic through West Hills, and this is the same thing. You can't get there from the center of West Hills without going out to Middlebrook Pike or Gallagher View. So it's that's really not the question there. But nonetheless, the council did vote in favor of the developer. They which means that was originally scheduled for next month. I think it might be postponed again another month.
But the developer is going to go to have their no, it is going to be next month. It is scheduled for, but they're going to go to the Planning Commission for their use on review request, and there will be a public hearing about it and vote there. Now one thing there about process is that decision stays with.
Right, it doesn't have to come back to City Council.
All those aggrieved parties can appeal it to City Council, but if that doesn't, unless that happens, the Planning Commission is the final say on the actual plan for the development, because this was just a zoning thing.
If you have always dreamed of living at the intersection of Middlebrook Pike and North Gallagher View Road, just hold your horses, but it's coming soon.
Yeah, and you can get a $400,000 to $400,000 townhouse.
Right.
That's what the price point is, which was another thing that Thomas mentioned was, it's, it doesn't really fit affordability or anything like that, which usually isn't a consideration.
Although honestly, a $400,000 home it's a bit above what median homes in Knox County are going for now, but not as much as it used to be.
It's actually a pretty good deal for West Knoxville.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was a relatively it was a curious fight. I'll say that.
Well, and I find it a little bit reassuring. We're in the midst of a lot of crazy things going on politically, certainly at the national level, also at the state level, and often at the local level. And so there's something reassuring about a zoning fight in West Hills that just makes you feel like, okay,
things are normal.
Right, exactly.
Well, one thing that's where we do have gotten a little crazy is with charter schools. We talked last week about a nonprofit that wants to open a religious charter school, which is not allowed in Tennessee at the moment. They have filed a lawsuit challenging Tennessee's law that prohibits religious charter schools, and Attorney General John Skrmetti weighed in on the issue at the request of Knoxville Republican House member Michelle Carriger, but Skrmetti weighed in on the charter school ban and said that basically two provisions of the charter school program were likely unconstitutional, and that it violated the free exercise of religion section of the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, and his opinions are just that. Now they are, they're given much more weight than my opinion, certainly, and but they are given weight, but they don't have the force of law. It doesn't, just because he says that the law, that the program falls short of the Constitution, doesn't mean it's so, but it does influence things. It can, it's not writing a friend of the court brief, but could be brought up, and probably if they asked him to write a friend of the court brief, he could easily revise that to make it one. But anyway, his basically what he was saying was that charter schools in Tennessee, the way Tennessee set up charter schools is they are considered public schools. They're just run by nonprofit organizations that can get it, and gives them flexibility. But they consider them public schools. They get public money to run their school. They have to comply with state regulations on things like testing and teacher certification and those kinds of things. So that's always, so they are, the lawmakers' intent was for these to be considered public schools.
Right. They're supposed to offer options within the public school system.
Right. Skrmetti says hogwash that charter schools are the creation of the nonprofit that gets the charter. So they're not the creation of the local government, the local school board or the state of Tennessee. They are created by a private organization, and they are run by a private organization. That even though the state regulates them, the state doesn't run them, or by extension, a public school system doesn't run them. The charter, the organization that has the charter runs them. And so he said, basically, they're not public school, or they're not a public entity, and should not be considered as such. And those two aspects of the charter school regime in Tennessee is, the organization that runs them and the operations of the school. That those provisions of the Tennessee charter school program are unconstitutional. They do not pass the
right, and therefore they can't be restricted from being explicitly religious, because that would be a violation of the First Amendment, free exercise of religion.
Yeah.
Now, this entire argument, of course, completely turns the fundamental notion of charter schools on its head. I mean, Skrmetti is literally saying black is white here, because the whole argument by proponents of charter schools for years and years, going back to, the early 90s when they really entered the national education conversation, has been these are not attacks on public education. They're not attacks on public schools. They are just different kinds of public schools that offer options to students within the public school system, that they are subject to all the same state and federal regulations as other public schools, which includes things like you can't discriminate against students with disabilities. You have to provide for them, and all of the other protections that come with public schools, and all of the standards that they have to meet that private schools are exempt from because they're not state funded. He's actually saying, no, they're not public schools. They're functionally, if you follow his logic, you can't really follow his logic. This is not a logical argument. It's a political argument. Because if you follow his logic, it's basically saying, well, yeah, these are 100% paid for by taxpayer dollars. In some cases, private charter schools will have their own foundations that provide some extra funding, but they are publicly funded schools, and they are. Skrmetti is saying that no, they're created by the nonprofit, but that is that's wrong. That's not true. They are created by the charter. The reason they're called charter schools is you can apply for one, but you don't have a school until you have the charter. The charter is awarded by the local district, or we also have, you can get them through the state. If the locals won't approve it, you can appeal to the state, but they are literally created by government. There's no version of this that you can say that if they're a charter school, the charter has to come from the government. They are clearly created by government. And so, what Skrmetti is obviously trying to do, and we talked about this with the Wilberforce Academy lawsuit last week, what that is trying to do is get a case to the Supreme Court and try to get the Supreme Court to say, yeah, it's fine to have completely religious, ideologically oriented, publicly funded charter schools that are going to proselytize to children day in and day out. Taxpayers have to pay for this if the state decides they want to do it, and will have no say, I guess, over what that curriculum is. It raises all these questions because the challenge that Wilberforce is having is they want to create a Christian school, and state law says they can't. But if you kind of get past that and say, okay, you can be religious, well, what does that mean for all of the, that's only one of a whole bunch of requirements of charter schools. Does it also mean that they're exempt from other parts of the state curriculum? Does it mean that they don't have to serve students with disabilities? Skrmetti seems to be opening the door to an idea of fully publicly funded private schools with limited or no accountability to the taxpaying public that is paying for them. And, Skrmetti is part of this current wave we have now of extremely political and partisan attorneys general. The Tennessee Attorney General did not used to be a political culture warrior. That's not what they were perceived as being there to do. But that's become the norm in lots of states. It started with Republican attorneys general who really kind of pushed this, but now you have in blue states, Democratic attorneys general, or Letitia James in New York, for example, are also becoming very, aggressive political actors. And it kind of takes this whole notion that the attorney general is there. As we were kind of talking about with judges before, the attorney general traditionally was seen as the person who, the legislature or the governor wants to do something, comes to them and says, can we do this? Then the attorney general, looks at the law, looks at court precedent, looks at what all these things are set up to do, and comes back and gives a reasoned response. And often in the past, an attorney general would come back and say, no, you can't do that. That's unconstitutional, which would certainly be the response here based on precedent and law. But Skrmetti's not that kind of attorney general. He is a political activist, and he is responding to demands from, the sort of like cultural right in the state. And so I think, among other things, this puts Knox County in a really peculiar position, because that lawsuit is filed against the Knox County School Board, since they are the initial chartering authority here. Presumably, the defense that Knox County would have to this lawsuit would be to go and say, well, no, this is what state law says, this is what Supreme Court precedent says, and so, yes, you cannot have a religiously oriented charter school. But as they prepare their defense in that lawsuit, now they've been totally undercut by the state's own attorney general saying, yeah, no, I think that state law is unconstitutional. What is Knox County supposed to do with that? They're going to be out there defending a state law that the state's own attorney general is out there saying, nah, I don't think we have to do this. It creates a really strange legal situation.
Well, and one thing that is embedded in the opinion, and really the charter school thing is kind of the nose of the camel under the tent, because it reflects, and Skrmetti goes through a long history. He gives a long history lesson about religious schools in the United States, but this goes back to the Establishment Clause of the Constitution, which prohibits Congress from establishing a religion, and the Establishment Clause is kind of seen as the reason that you can't have religious public schools. Well, Skrmetti said, now then, and here you get a little constitutional weeds. Skrmetti said that you got to remember the Constitution originally did not apply to states; it only applied to federal actions. So when it says that Congress shall not pass a law, it means Congress. It doesn't mean state legislatures. And for more than half of the country's existence, that was the case. So the freedom of speech and freedom of religion and the right to bear arms were only kept the feds from getting involved. States could do whatever they wanted. Then came the concept of incorporation, where the portions of the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, can apply to the states.
Yeah, and they did that after the 14th Amendment to make clear that all of the Confederate states coming back into the Union were, in fact, going to have to apply the 14th Amendment to their own state operations as well.
Yeah, the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, which basically says, you got to enforce the laws equally to everyone. The idea was you could use that as a justification to incorporate whatever, to apply. They use the word incorporation, basically apply a portion of the U.S. Constitution to state actions. Well, in our own Edward Terry Sanford, who is the only U.S. Supreme Court justice from Knoxville, wrote the first opinion incorporating a portion of the Constitution, the First Amendment, the free speech rights to the states. And every state had some sort of speech provision in its Constitution, but now they had to, it had to follow the federal example. But that also started this thing where only portions of they didn't incorporate or apply the Constitution to all of the Constitution to all the states at once. They did it individually through various decisions. The Establishment Clause was applied to state actions. It is incorporated. Skrmetti says that's wrong. Never should have happened. And because as written, it only applies to congressional actions, that Congress can't establish a national religion. States, however, could and did, and there were. It does go through this long history lesson of religious state support for religious schools all across the country in the 1800s. Things have changed since the 1800s, but
there are people who would like to change a lot of them back.
Yes, and that's one of them. And so I don't know. This is a conservative legal theory that's been out there. You don't hear about it a whole lot unless you're in legal circles, I guess, or constitutional legal circles.
Conservative justices have absolutely been trying to fence in the 14th Amendment for a long time, and they've done it in various ways, chipping away at different decisions.
Well, this would, and I don't know how you would do this because I'm at the limits of my legal knowledge now, but it basically sounds like there's, if there's a way to unincorporate the Constitution, to take back the application, at least for the Establishment Clause, he would be in favor of that.
Well, and there's also the reading that this conservative Supreme Court majority has increasingly taken in these so-called religious liberty cases, where for decades we had jurisprudence out of the Supreme Court that increasingly said that the Establishment Clause limited how much governments could participate or promote, participate in or promote particular faiths. Now that is kind of, again, being somewhat turned on its head to say that, no, in fact, telling a Christian charter school operator that they can't open a charter school, that is the violation of the Establishment Clause, because the state is not being a neutral arbiter, but is actually like discriminating against somebody, because basically if this wasn't a religious school, you could get the charter, but since it is, you can't. Therefore, that in itself is religious discrimination. Again, this is, it's sort of a black is white legal argument in terms of the way that the whole country has understood these things for generations now. I do think that it opens a whole, let's say this case or a case like it gets to the Supreme Court, and that this court majority does in fact say, yes, you have to allow religious schools to, if you're going to have a charter school program, you have to let religious schools participate. As we have discussed with vouchers, which we're already doing in Tennessee, sending taxpayer money to explicitly religious schools to proselytize to their students, you could really open the floodgates. What that produces in the long run in terms of the kind of schools that we're going to see and the kind of accountability that they will have to we, the taxpaying public who will be supporting them, I think that there are a whole lot of questions about that. I mean, I'm not a religious person. Do I want to pay taxes to support a school that is going to devote some portion of its school day to teaching students using my money that I'm going to hell? Like, is this what we want to actually use our taxpayer money for? But that's clearly the direction that is being pushed.
Well, but that legal the argument that the theory behind Skrmetti's opinion that the Establishment Clause was improperly applied to the states. If there is a Supreme Court decision made it apply, a Supreme Court decision could take that application away.
Yeah.
If that happens, and the Establishment Clause no longer applies to the states, then nothing at all would prevent any state from establishing an official religion for their state.
And saying that you have to be a member of a church in order to run for office, for example.
Right. So, the example everybody thinks of, because the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has a huge presence in Utah. Utah could, they could change their constitution. I guess it would be their constitution to make the church, also more commonly known as the Mormon Church. They don't like that anymore, but the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the official religion of the state of Utah. The state of Tennessee could, the Constitution could change to make maybe Christianity in general, maybe Protestant Christianity, maybe Southern Baptist. The official religion in Massachusetts could make the Roman Catholic Church the official church of the state of Massachusetts. These things could happen if this theory goes through, and so it's I don't think that there's a whole lot of stomach for that yet, but as the judiciary as a whole has been leaning more conservative. More conservative judges are on the bench, and these kinds of theories are getting a fresh look from some of these.
For sure.
Judges.
Well, and I have a conservative Christian friend who, maybe not surprisingly, I argue with a lot. And one of the things that I say to him sometimes is, you can call all of this religious liberty all you want, but like what you guys really want is a theocracy. And he does not like that word. He says, no, absolutely not. We're not trying to establish a theocratic state. Jonathan Skrmetti may not be trying to establish a theocratic state in Tennessee, but these kinds of arguments are absolutely the kinds of steps that you would take if you were trying to do that.
That's true. Well, as I said at the very outset of this is a non-binding opinion, and that Carringer requested. Don't know if Carringer requested it, because she wants to know about this school, the Wilberforce Academy, their lawsuit. But there's also the possibility that that there are legislators who would like to change the state system for charter schools to allow religious charter schools, which would invite more legal challenges and maybe ensure that it gets to the Supreme Court at some point.
Sure. Well, and that's certainly something coming on the heels of this opinion from Skrmetti. It will not be at all surprising if we get a bill filed in the upcoming legislative session to do exactly that.
Yeah. So anyway, that's one more battle in the culture war over public schools. So the next topic that we're going to shift to doesn't have to do with legal battles per se, but it has to do with some buildings that are notable in the city of Knoxville. And one is for sale. 2 have been restored. The one for sale is the Truist Tower, the probably more commonly known as Riverview Tower in downtown Knoxville. A gleaming, glass-clad bank building built by the butchers.
It's the slightly shorter and slightly rounder of our two skyscrapers. If they even count as skyscrapers, I'm not sure what the cutoff is for skyscrapers.
In Knoxville, they're skyscrapers.
Right.
I think anything over 10 stories in Knoxville is probably what we would consider a skyscraper. But anyway, it is for sale. It's one of those Class A office space buildings that really got into some kind of all across the country because of COVID. Companies cut back their space, and these kind of buildings kind of got it. Some of them across the country got into hot water. So anyway, the Truist building is for sale. Now there's not, Jesse, you were the one who looked into this. There's not a sales price.
Right. There's not an asking price. It's basically you can get in touch and make an offer. The last time it was sold was in 2013. The current owners, the Hertz Investment Group, which is a national real estate group, they own buildings all over the country. They bought it in 2013 for, I think, just under $25 million, which was I don't know if that was a bargain price, but the people who they bought it from had actually paid about $40 million for it about 8 years earlier during the big inflation of real estate prices in the early 2000s before we had the crash. After the crash, Hertz was able to pick it up for about $25 million, and it's still assessed by the Knox County property assessor, at least until we get the upcoming reappraisal. It's appraised at just under $26 million right now. So at least according to them, its value hasn't increased a lot in the last 12 years that Hertz has owned it. I have no idea what a building like this actually goes for. I guess we'll find out, or if it goes for anything at all.
If you have to ask, you can't afford it, I guess is the thing. But one thing about this building is I mentioned that Class A office space was readily available after COVID. Well, this building's almost full.
Yeah, they're 96% rented, and they have a lot of long-term tenants. First of all, Truist. There's been a succession of banks that have occupied the building as banks have been bought and sold the way they are. But so Truist is there. Several of the city's most prominent kind of white shoe law firms are there. The Big Ears Festival has an office there. There's a lot of offices in the building, and it's pretty full. It's got a parking garage. Downtown is obviously growing. This building is right next to the Andrew Johnson building, which is being renovated back into a hotel. So it's kind of down at that south end of downtown that is starting to see some reinvestment and redevelopment. It'll be interesting to see. And you mentioned the butchers. I just think it's interesting. It's a little feature of Knoxville that some of our best known buildings and landmarks have these somewhat sordid histories because, of course, both the Riverview Tower, which was built by C.H. Butcher, and the neighboring Plaza Tower, built by Jake Butcher, those both opened in the early 1980s. Well, I think Riverview opened later. It was 1985, so it's 40 years old now. And basically, the Butcher brothers built those two big buildings and then immediately went bankrupt and went to prison on fraud charges. But they left us these buildings.
Yeah.
It's who's to say that crime doesn't pay off in sort of like a civic sense.
Well, and one thing about it is these are, you mentioned that they, qualifies, or I guess they qualify as skyscrapers. They're also the two most recent major buildings, especially tall buildings, built downtown, and but they were built 50 years ago.
Yeah.
They were almost 50
and
years
given
ago.
the climate you're talking about for office space, it seems pretty likely, at least as far as the rest of this century goes, it's a little hard to imagine anybody else building anything like that downtown.
Yeah, well, that is, if you really stretch the definition of new, then that's a development in a new building. 2 historic buildings were also in the news this last week, both on the same day. As a matter of fact, the sanitary laundry building, which is a much smaller building than the Truist Tower, the Riverview Tower, but it's up on Broadway, right close to the X of the intersection with North Central Street. The sanitary laundry building, long closed, contaminated because it was a cleaner and all the solvents and chemicals that were used at commercial laundries. It has been restored and was opened on Thursday as the new headquarters of McCarty Hillsapel McCarty, the architecture firm. This is a building that they received. It received a lot of public assistance to get it back on its feet. It was, like I said, it was contaminated. I swear
and it was actually owned by the city. The city had ended up in possession of it because it needed to be cleaned up and nobody else would do it.
Yeah, something needed to happen. It was in foreclosure. The nobody had, with no interest whatsoever from private sector, so the city bought it. Did some environmental remediation, but more needed to be done. The part of the deal on the in fact, the city, in a way, well, KCDC still owns it. They actually own the property. But there's the state provided a $500,000 environmental remediation grant that went with the renovations of the building. The city pitched in $250,000 historic preservation grant to help fund the project. McCarty Hillsapel put in $8 million or so of their own money. It was, but the result is a big open space, reuse of a building that was in shambles and off the tax rolls and everything else. And now they're paying. We said KCDC owns it, so there's really no taxes on it. But McCarty Hillsapel, it does pay an in lieu of tax payment to. They have a 10-year in lieu of tax payment to the city and the county. And at the end of that 10-year period, which pretty much starts today or starts right now, once that ends, ownership will go to McCarty Hillsapel. They will pay property taxes. They will, and it will, and that is yet another kind of a revitalization effort of that area of North Knox. Yeah,
which has been really growing quickly. That whole sort of wedge there from the intersection of Broadway and Central going north, and especially kind of, or I guess it's. Those directions aren't exactly straight up there, but basically
nothing straight about North Knoxville.
Yeah, the areas between like Tyson Street and and Seth, who owns a business in on North Central that offers drag shows, among other things.
That was
anyway,
great joke, Scott.
That whole area,
unintentional, but yeah,
running up between Central and Tyson and bounded by Broadway up to Bernard. I mean, there's been so much that's happened there in recent years. Like right next to it, of course, you've got like the Remedy Coffee Shop and Paisan Bakery, and then the massive Axle Logistics developments on Central. There's new apartments on Tyson. You go up to Bernard and you get Schulzbrau Brewery. Just like an explosion of both commercial and residential.
Right, we got the county's in serious talks about selling off the old Steelers building there at the top of the hill.
Yep.
And so it's continuing up that side of Central, which is my neighborhood. And then we have a new apartment complex, condos. I can't remember exactly what it was, going up on the intersection right in the middle of Happy Holler. We have a smaller 6-unit complex just go on the market this week, as well as the one that's right above the Central Bottle in the residential side. We have another new business, since I'm going to brag about my neighborhood real quick. There's a place called Stem to Stem that's about to open on the corner of it in Happy Holler there. It's been a lot going on, and it's super exciting for me, at least. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, and so now McCarty Holzapfel is there too. One piece of that property that is still available is on the back part of it, the old blue industrial building that, if people know it as anything, they probably know it as Bar Marley. Which
that's part of the property now,
right? But it is being offered. I mean, McCarty Holzapfel is not using the Bar Marley property. Yeah. They are looking for people to come in and use it. So if you're interested in getting in on the action there, you can take a look at that.
Yeah, talk to Nathan Honeycutt, who's the principal there and a newly elected city council member.
Well, and interestingly, I think the real estate representative who has that listing for that property is Matthew DeBartolabin, the other recently elected city. So there's a couple of city council members you can talk to about that.
It was kind of interesting. I remember when they announced that we're going to be doing that. I mean, this is an architecture firm, and you think, well, most architecture firms, wouldn't if you're going to build a new headquarters, wouldn't you want to design your own building and make a signature statement and that sort of thing? And Honeycutt, I mean, remember when they were talking about doing this, was like, well, this fits with us, because they do a lot of historic preservation architectural work, they're it's that beneficial reuse. It's something for the community that they make a big deal. They made a big deal out of, is that this is it's not just good for McCarty Holzapfel. It's good for the community as well to have this building back on the rolls. Now, earlier on Thursday, there was a similar ribbon cutting at a historic property at the Howell House at the Knoxville Botanical Garden and Arboretum in East Knoxville, and that is the old Howell family house on that property. The Howell family ran a couple of landscaping and nursery businesses out of that property. It eventually became the Botanical Gardens because of their presence there, and that again was a property that the city invested in, and they didn't have the environmental remediation problems that were evident at the sanitary laundry building, but it did have water damage and all kinds of things. It was in disrepair, and the city provided another $250,000, essentially a little bit less than that, for to help that renovation project go, and now it's going to be the new visitor center there. And the Botanical Garden is one of the it's really one of the jewels of Knoxville, underappreciated by a lot of people who might not know it's there, or they might have heard about it but haven't been. It's not the easiest place to find, but it's well worth kind of navigating the twists and turns of the streets to get there.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's been the Arboretum has been there now for let's say close to 20 years. I don't remember the exact year that it was officially reopened as the Botanical Garden and Arboretum. But even at that, I think there probably are still a lot of people who haven't been there. And if you are among them, it's really worth checking out. It is actually free to visit. There's parking there, and you can go there pretty much any time during the day and just walk around. There's sort of different areas of it. A lot of it is just sort of natural areas, and then there are some specific features that have been developed that are really nice. There's like a walk through a bamboo grove that can be very atmospheric. There's the delightful secret garden area that was developed and dedicated to our late friend Andy Ray. So yeah, it's just a terrific place to go and, have a picnic lunch or take the dog for a walk, or whatever. Just a absolute gem in the heart of East Knoxville.
Yeah. The Howell House there, as I said, is going to be the visitor center, and so you got two properties that are going to be probably rotating off of Knox Heritage's list of fragile and fading properties.
Yes, and rotating off in the good way. There's two ways to get off that list. One is that somebody renovates them and returns them to use, and the other is that they fall into disrepair or get
demolished.
Yeah.
All right. Well, one thing I do want to mention briefly. We talked about the city council meeting on Tuesday from last Tuesday that had the weird zoning matter. That was also the last city council meeting for 5 of the council members. Andrew Roberto, Lauren Ryder, Gwen McKenzie, Seema Singh, and
Tommy Smith.
Tommy Smith are all rotating off. They're all term limited. They did a lot of reminiscing at that meeting. Dragged the meeting out for a while, but that's okay. They a couple of them teared up a little bit, believe it or not, when they were talking about leaving. But anyway, that was the last of the last meeting for them. A couple of them have some official duties to do between now and December 20th, but that was the last voting meeting that they had. December 20th. Honeycutt, Delarbeladen, and 3 others are going to be newly elected city council members be sworn in, and that's something, of course, we'll get up on that Saturday and run over there for that. So anyway, this coming week we've got some interesting things coming up. They got the Knox County Board of Housing Stability's meeting at 1:00 at the city's Public Works Service Center. That is on Morris Avenue off of,
and that's on Monday, right?
That is Monday at 1:00. They will be discussing all things to do with addressing the homelessness situation. I'm sure that with winter arriving and had some days of the warming centers, the temporary warming centers being open, that will be discussed. There will be, I'm sure, discussion about how to ensure that people who are in the dire situation of not having any housing will be able to stay warm and out of the elements during the coldest nights of the winter. Then Monday evening at 5, County Commission's meeting. The agenda's, not, I wouldn't say live. There's a lot of stuff on it, but not a lot of really earth-shattering stuff. Andy Fox had a couple of proposed ordinances. One of them is regarding data centers is going to be delayed indefinitely. He's got to work that one out. He has another one that they discussed during agenda review last week that will ensure that real estate people who are selling real estate cannot discriminate against American citizens. When you boil it right down to it, that they can't put anything in their covenants or anything else that would prevent American citizens from buying property.
Not a problem we've actually encountered in Knox County, but this was spurred by a development in Loudoun County that was set up as a foreign investment vehicle, and therefore I think the properties can only be sold to non-Americans in order to preserve its tax advantages, and that got some attention, especially in local right-wing circles. That I think the scare there is that China is going to come in and buy up a bunch of property and then tell Americans they can't buy it. So we're saying that they can't do that.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that those covenants are probably might be of dubious legality anyway. Yeah. But anyway, that's coming up. Also on Tuesday, the Juvenile Service Center board is meeting, and they've been since their formation. They've been it's been a pretty newsworthy event, and so they'll be talking about this. This is this would have been the last time that they would have met before the sheriff took over operations there, but the sheriff is not going to be taking over operations there until July.
If then, it's not actually clear that that's going to happen.
That is true, and so those things are going to happen. As I said, on the 20th, there's going to be the swearing in of the new city council members. Everything other than that, though, is going to. This is really the time for things to slow down, because we have the holidays coming up. County Commission is meeting a week earlier than they normally meet because of the holidays. City Council is not going to be meeting not going to hold the second meeting of the month that they usually hold. So things are slowing down for the holidays, and we wish we could completely slow down the way that things do in government, but we'll still be out there, antenna raised in case anything does happen. So, but that's about it for this week. Unless you have anything else to add, Jesse, that...
I do not. I will say that next week when we have our recording, I will bring the traditional eggnog that we have made a custom of in our pre-holiday podcast recording. So maybe we'll be a little merry.
Oh, well, definitely so. It's always fun when you bring the eggnog. So I don't know why you don't bring it every week, but
there's certain things that you can only do at certain times.
Okay. Well, all right. That'll be it for this week. Again, Seth Barber, our Lord Seth Barber. Got to get the title in as well.
I paid good money for that.
Yeah, I know. But Lord Seth Barber, thank you for production work. I want to thank Will Wright for providing music here. And we will be back next week with another episode of Compass Points.
And we will still be human.
Speak for yourself.
CompassKnox.com is your best source for news and politics in Knoxville and Knox County. If you'd like to learn more about the topics discussed on today's podcast, go to CompassKnox.com and subscribe for in-depth coverage and much more. And many thanks to William Wright for composing our theme song. Compass Points is a partnership of Barking Shark Media and Barbarian Productions, and recorded by Lord Seth A. Barber at Barbarian Studios, Knoxville, Tennessee.